everybody. I'm Peter Grant with Zaner Metals in Denver. Welcome to This Week in Metals. And what a week it was, Peter
Oof.
Thomas. What do you know?
I know that it was a nosedive. It looked like the Wile E. Coyote in Roadrunner when he catches the anvil and goes
Right.
off the side of the cliff. It was not pretty.
Not only does he hit the ground, but he goes deep
It
into the
goes
ground.
right. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So just when you think
So
there might be a bottom, there isn't really, at
well,
least in the Roadrunner.
oh, at least in the Roadrunner, exactly right. But I'll tell you what, if I was looking at, let's say, silver when it was like looking at 30, and now that it's into the 25 area, I might be buying breaks rather than selling dips. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I don't necessarily disagree with you, Pete. I would only
Hmm.
say that given the magnitude of the drop and the volatility in
Right.
the drop, that might give some traders pause in terms of trying to catch the falling knife, if you know what I
Yeah. Oh,
mean.
yeah. Well, you know what? Everything we do is long term. It's buy and hold. It's buy and put in your qualified accounts and hang on, and it's all long term. And if you're buying 4, 5, 10% breaks in very bullish markets which have good fundamentals, in the long term, there's a very good
Yeah,
possibility that it could go your way.
right. I
Yeah.
think there'll be a lot of investors waiting for at least some consolidation
Sure,
to at
there will
least
be.
give the
Absolutely.
impression that
Yep.
a bottom might be forming here. But
No
because it was
arguments.
it was it was a nerve rattler
Yeah.
for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. And all commodities, it was a nerve
Yeah,
rattler. And
yeah,
and China said in no uncertain terms that they were going to be selling commodities and attempting to bring the price down from the speculators in China. And boy, it sure looks that way, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second.
Sure thing.
But I would also say that if ever there was a week to showcase the benefits of hedging. If you're long the vault, any kind of physical metal, and
Exactly
we're
right.
unhedged, it's enough to give you, heart palpitations. I
Oh,
would
I
imagine.
mean, if you're holding product, as we say, in the vault, which we call in the box, and if you're holding gold, silver, platinum, palladium, rhodium, you got hit, and you got hit hard. And in what Pete is saying is bottom line is, if you're hedged, you don't care where the market goes. You're beta neutral. You
You,
own
you,
it in the
you
box.
sleep easier.
You don't care. You just don't care. You come in, and the money that you lost on what's in your one account is generally picked up in your other account, and it doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
hopefully it is, that a lot of our people, I know, we're very well protected.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's jump in and talk specifics here.
Sure.
Starting with gold.
Let's not.
Gold was down 6% last week.
Right.
It was the third consecutive lower weekly close, and Friday was the sixth consecutive lower daily close. Uh, the yellow metal hit a 7-week low at
That was it.
1760.78.
Yep.
So yeah, um, it was a wild ride down.
Yeah.
I
Gold. Yeah. Gold got hit hard, and we saw a lot of people taking product off the table. And then we saw politicians recommending to sell it, didn't we, Pete?
um, Tell me about that.
Well, at the G7, there was talk
Oh,
about following
Emmanuel
following
Macron
the Canadian model and using
and
the
the
Canadian model
British
because it
model.
worked so well, and they sold all their hard assets off, still have the same amount of debt, and now have no gold. So
Yeah.
that worked out really well.
Yeah, so what my friend Mr. Thomas is referring to is during the G7 summit, Emmanuel Macron
Yes, he did.
suggested that the G7 sell some gold to fund bailouts for Africa,
Yes.
and and I say, Mr. Macron, you first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
guys
Just
still
look
got
at
quite a bit of gold in the
yeah,
vaults.
they do actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they do. And so yeah, you first. I like that. Go ahead,
Mike.
look at all your people and go, we're going to sell our gold, and send it to Africa, and it's all going to be accountable. We know exactly
That's
where it's going to go.
that would almost guarantee the bottom, given the history of the
I really would. I like that.
of the
Yeah,
Bank of England selling gold and the Bank of
yeah.
Canada selling gold.
Well,
They
Bank
pretty much
Canada
picked
has
it.
no gold. Yeah, they have no gold. Yeah, so that's they're gone. Like I said, they sold all their gold. They still have the same amount of debt, and but now they don't have any gold. So it
Well,
worked out real well for
my
them.
comment during the week was, who needs to sell hard assets to fund a bailout these days?
Yeah,
You
oh yeah.
you just issue debt.
Hmm.
If the French government wants to buy that African debt, by all means,
There
and
you go.
boom, you got your bailout.
And you know what? You don't even have to print it anymore. You don't have to spend all that money on that yucky ink. You can just do a few keystrokes. Boom, there
It's
you go. Right.
it's all quite crazy.
All right. Hey,
But
listen.
I would say the market looks pretty dismal from a technical perspective. I mean, all the important moving averages and all the important retracement levels have been violated.
Highlighted. Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say that the market is as oversold as it's been since that double bottom was established early in the year.
Well put.
Um, so I mean, we could see some. I mean, I thought we might see some short covering on Friday. We saw a little bit overseas, I think, but the market couldn't get back above $1,800
It tried,
and
but it
sold
failed.
off and set
Yeah.
that new 7 week low during the
Uh,
U.S. session. That's sort of my short term level. If we do in fact get back above and close back above $1,800, that puts it back above the 100-day moving average. I'm feeling a little bit better, but like I said, the deterioration of the technical picture, uh, you know, uh, leaves me leery at this point, and we might see some additional downside. And as I suggested previously, maybe some signs of consolidation or bottoming might be what the market needs at this point, but before we can hopefully make another run at the upside.
yeah.
The big
But
news this
but
week, go.
the big I have big news today is that the Chinese announced they're going to put 3,000 ATMs out for their new electronic currency, their new yuan, and which is quote backed by gold. Although the last inspection of the vaults showed that they had tungsten-based gold bars, so
I
that,
remember.
oh yeah, and the people that said it was tungsten all vanished. But that's going to be very interesting to see, because now, I mean, it wasn't free before. Wait till they control every dime you spend and the value of it. It's going to be very interesting indeed.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Fed because they were the ones that sort of precipitated this big sell-off. I mean, there are other things going on in the market, but
No,
the
but
big
this is
sell-off on
yeah,
Thursday came in, and Wednesday and Thursday came in the wake of the FOMC statement. Um, in reality, the statement didn't really change. And that's sort of what I expected. They
yeah,
they they acknowledged, if you will, that growth and labor market dynamics had improved.
okay,
Um, they um, they acknowledged the rising inflation
yes.
by
Yeah, now that's
referring.
the first time we've had an inflation acknowledgement, correct?
Well, they didn't. It was sort of a tacit acknowledgement because they only referred to um, the 2% target, inflation
Hmm.
target,
Right.
in the past tense.
Now,
So
Mister
that's in the
Mister,
rearview mirror now. We're above it. So, but they
yeah,
didn't really
everything's
even say
good
that.
and nothing to see here, and then they ran out the yellow tape and they told everyone to move along. But didn't Mister Ballard kind of have a little something to say there, Pete?
Well, the what really kind of set the market on edge were the dot plots, and so there was this a fairly significant change in FOMC members' expectations for the mid
Yep.
range of Fed funds rate, and that sort of implied at least two rate hikes before the end of 2023. And even so, there were still
Yeah.
five members that thought we would be at the zero bound. still
Okay.
at the end of 2023. And
But it's
so
it's like it's one dove talking to another. Everything is fine. Move along. Everything's good,
everybody
right?
on this Fed is a dove, and
Oh, I
every
mean, it's
governor is a dove,
is a dove.
and
Yeah.
it's just
So
grades of dovishness.
yeah, and it's nobody's gonna ruffle a feather here. So
There's no balance. But
no, there's
and
no balance and move along here.
that's
Yeah.
important because
Oh yeah.
I my interpretation is that they'll keep the foot on the gas pedal. I mean,
I have no choice.
even Powell has said and said last week that we should take the dot plots with a big grain of salt, and then
Yeah, well, don't
and then
ignore
and
those numbers. They're just factual.
remember last year when he said we're not even thinking about a rate hike.
Yes, I do.
Well, he said that we could consider this last meeting as them talking about a taper. So the taper is going to
Okay.
come first, right? The taper will come first, and then rate hikes will follow. But they're
Uh,
maybe at the stage of talking about tapering. But
so we're kind of getting close, but we're not quite there yet.
I used to think that Alan
Mhm.
Greenspan was the king of Fed speak.
No, I'm
Saying a
sorry.
bunch of
Alan
gobbledygook.
Greenspan was the king of
I
speak.
don't
There's
know.
no
Powell's
question.
got
No,
some chops.
nobody could mumble like him. He had it down. Whatever. And you go,
Powell can
what
take
did
you
you
in
say?
circles
Yeah.
and not really say anything. So
And hey, you know what? He's cashing a check. Life is good, right?
I think that this was a big nothing burger in reality, and the market
Oh,
will
yeah, nothing.
digest that at some point.
Yeah,
In terms of you know, I think what the market really needs to focus on is the debt and deficits, inflation. So
yeah.
we got some new
Okay.
inflation data last week. PPI is now running at 6.6% year on
Scalding
year.
hot. Yeah.
Import prices
Yep.
10.8% year
I
on
was.
year,
I mean,
and
that just stunned a whole bunch
and
of people.
export prices 17.4% year
Yeah.
on year. I mean, it is feeling like
Oh,
late 70s.
and Biden just gave him the go ahead to tax the life out of our products when they go over. It's wait till you start seeing some of the numbers coming in on that soon. It's
Yeah,
going to be interesting. But let's move over to silver here,
sure.
and silver numbers. Here's the problem. I think our viewers need to know. It is that all of our year-on-year data is COVID. So when they come out and they go, "Oh, usage is up 24%. Why, oh, why?" And you go, "Yeah, but the economy
It's
was dead."
coming
You
from
know?
where?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the numbers and I went, "So what?" I mean, it means nothing. And then year-on-year numbers, you have to go back 2 years because we get these numbers, for example, on jewelry and then what's called silverware or flatware from the Silver Institute. Great source and really accurate. And they came out and they went, we're up about 25% all total, but it's from year on year. You have to go back 2 years now in order to do a proper overlay. So anybody that's keeping numbers as far as consumption goes, I mean, obviously we're picking up things that people are buying, things that have been pent up, and they need to create, silver solder and slurry for all of these solar arrays and things of that nature. But you know, take all the numbers with a little grain of salt. They're all slightly skewed. All right.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, so last week silver was down 7.4%.
Right.
It hit a 7-week low of 25.74.
Mhm.
In reality, I look at the chart and I don't see it looking that bad. It is still basically in the upper half of the
Of this
COVID
rally.
era range,
Right.
if you will. The
Yep.
midpoint of the range is 25.84. And as I said, we hit
Okay.
25.74,
All right.
and then rebounded a little bit into Friday's close. So, it doesn't look quite as bleak.
No,
It
and you know what? It goes to what we've been pounding out on our show for a very long time. You buy breaks. All
Yeah,
right. Just buy breaks. It bounced off of 30, it's down to 25. You know what? adding a little bit here. You don't have to, don't spend the world. Just dip your toe in, get a couple of rolls of silver, a bar or two, put it in your IRA, put it in your IRA Roth, whatever, whichever way you go, and just add. And if we get another little break, dollar cost average, put a little bit more in there,
Yeah.
it's, and history has shown that at some point, there's a very high probability you're going to do okay.
Yeah. I would also point out that silver is now more oversold than it has been since September of 2020, when it put in a low at 2164.
Interesting.
So we've
Yeah,
got good
that's a good
support
number.
at 2567, which is the 61.8% retracement level.
Thank you.
And then below that, kind of the triangle support. So this big triangle that we've been in for a while, that
Okay.
trend line will rise up to right around $25 this week.
Okay.
So that
Pretty
whole area
interesting.
it seems to be pretty decent support.
Okay.
I'd love to see it go back above 27 and close above 27 to let me breathe a little easier.
All right. Well, you know what? Let's hope that some of our people, our silver apes, our some of our followers in the Riddick group get a chance to buy up some product on this break, and we get a little bounce, a little contracyclical bounce here. Let's move into the PGMs because Nor Nickel announced that mine too is open. And from the big flood they had and the 32,000 metric feet of concrete that they poured, on which we were going, what are all these concrete trucks? What's going on there? And they're going, nothing's going on, we're all fine, right? And
Nothing to see here.
nothing here, right? But now they're back, they've got mine number 2 rolling. So lots of interesting stuff coming out of Russia. VTB and VEB, which are major banks in Russia, both got together and put up $7.8 billion for more platinum production in Siberia. So we're seeing a lot of money going in, new mines opening up, and hopefully the deficit was announced at nine. Let's see, we were at 300,000 before, so we increased 600,000 because we're going to be at 0.9 million. So we're going to be at 900,000 ounce deficit by the end of this year in platinum. So the fundamentals look pretty good, Pete.
Yeah, the technicals not so much right now.
Okay.
I was okay with the market as long as it stayed within the range that has kind of dominated for the last several months. But we sort of
Yeah.
blew out to the downside. Platinum was down almost 10% last week.
Oh, it got hit hard.
The
Yeah.
third consecutive lower weekly close.
Right.
Hit a 20-week low at 1033.
Hmm.
I really needed to see it hold $1,000. So
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely right. Yeah.
yeah, so we'll see how that all plays out.
Plays out. What did you see in the Palladium? Because that was that the velocity of that break, due to the height that it was at, was much greater than in platinum.
Yeah, and
What do your
it's a
numbers look
thinly
like there?
traded market still.
Well,
So
that's true too.
they
That's a very
definitely
valid point.
moves tend to be amplified for sure.
Yeah.
Palladium was down 11.2%, second
Yes, it was.
consecutive lower weekly close, hit a 13-week low of
That's
24.52.
what I was looking for.
And I think again, if the decline, as you suggest, was a little bit more orderly, I think we would have probably seen some decent buying interest on the sell off. But it was straight down.
Straight down. Yeah.
And yeah, the reality for the white metals, platinum, palladium, silver, and I would extend this to copper as well, is that there is still a huge infrastructure push, both
Yeah.
technology and hard infrastructure,
Absolutely right.
that is going to be longer term supportive to these types of commodities,
Yep.
and particularly with a green bent, as we've said time and time again, um, that there is definitely a bias towards green energy and
Yeah.
technology,
Yeah.
and tighter and tighter emission standards,
Sure.
which I think bodes well in the long term.
For the
Um,
whites. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely right.
you just gotta
Absolutely right.
ride out this volatility.
Okay. Well, what do you think, guitar? Speaking of volatility, let's move into Dr. Cupbear.
Copper was down 9.4% last week.
Yes, it was.
Set a 9-week low at $4.12. Hey, on the bright side, it's still above $4.
Amazingly so. Very well put. And oh, by the way, we got a new player on the block. Serbia just came in and said that they are cranking on their new production in the mine is estimated at putting out 91,000 tons of copper, which makes them a full-on player. They're above 75,000 tons. And if Xinjiang would care to have us build them a hedging room, we would love to have your account. Come on over, guys. We will help you mitigate some of the risk and your production so that when you have a dollar break from the high, it won't be quite as painful.
Yeah, so I think in copper, the biggest concern is probably the selling out of China, if they are in
Oh,
fact selling copper reserves into the market.
that's a fact.
That's
Yeah.
tempered by some degree by what I previously said about infrastructure and green technology spending and the move to electric vehicles and so forth and so on.
Hmm.
Um, the Chinese must realize that that kind of demand is going to push up the price. They may not like it,
Well,
but
they do, and you know what? Who knows at what point remember the Chinese are very good traders, and for some reason people don't understand that. They've been doing this longer than a lot of countries have been around, right? So when they
they
come in
just
and go,
they
by the way,
just
we're taking the market down and we're doing it so that we can buy more product, they're not lying to you. That
it's
was
for
the
your own good.
yeah, yeah, don't worry, but this isn't
Don't you
hurting us a
speculate
bit.
against us.
Yeah. So at some point, on the backside of all of this, somebody's buying this stuff and they're buying it in big numbers and quietly. And
Yeah,
we're going to continue to see that for years because when you consume 63% of all the copper, and oh, by the way, you just bought 1 billion tons of coal, you're going to be pouring a lot of metal. And we're going to see that coming out, at some point. That influence of that, Pete, as you're pointing out, will have to bear itself out and create on the charts a level and we will see it flatten out. And at that point, I think you want to be a buyer.
sure. And I would also point out that there was no indication that China was going to be selling precious metals, but they spooked
Oh,
the market significantly enough that people started bailing out of commodity ETFs and commodity pools and
hmm.
commodity funds. And all of those securities invariably have a precious metals component to them.
Oh, sure.
Bloomberg, has like a 4% allocation to gold. I think the S&P ETF has a 4% allocation to gold as well. So as people start selling those commodities,
Hmm.
along with the Chinese,
Yeah,
those funds, they're selling gold and silver as well,
absolutely
and
right.
so
Yeah,
that factored
and
into the
copper.
sell-off in copper as well for sure.
Yeah,
But copper
absolutely.
was one that was specifically mentioned as being
Yep.
being sold by the Chinese along with aluminum and zinc
Aluminum and
on the
zinc.
metal
Now,
side.
the zinc prices was the only thing I think that was higher on everything. I mean, even when they tried to take it down, they couldn't because there's such shortage. People
Yeah.
were like, "Nah, I'm not selling this. I need some of this, and I'm selling it." But I think everything else got pretty well clobbered.
Yeah. Well, let's
Yeah,
look at the calendar for this week.
please do.
On Tuesday, we've got existing home sales. 5.7 million is what the
That's
market's
going to be
looking
interesting.
for.
Just
We
as
got
a preface to that,
manufacturing and services PMI out on Wednesday, along with new home sales, which are expected to be about 870,000.
okay,
Durable orders on Thursday. Um, Plus 3.0% is what the market's looking for. That's coming off of minus 1.3% in the previous month.
right.
And we get our third look at GDP. They're looking at 6.4% steady on GDP.
Well, I think on the housing permits, the housing starts, the completed housing, here's the problem. There's no lumber. So we know for a fact all over the country, and especially in Florida and Texas, they're telling people you can buy the house and in 8 months we'll start on it. So The numbers I don't think are really going to reflect the availability of things like galvanized nail that use zinc, you know, 2x4s, plywood. There's a lot, copper wire, which has just gotten cheap in this last week, but before that has gone up exponentially. So a lot of the substances that are used to build as housing are on delay because of shipping, because of lack of labor. So I think that number is going to be skewed.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at
Yeah,
all by that. I mean, it's an uptick from the expectations are an uptick from the previous month, but I wouldn't be
right.
surprised if there was a downside surprise on that. And
Yeah,
that might, put a little additional pressure
put a
on
little put a
copper
little
and
heat on the stock market
yeah.
too. Yeah,
Yeah, and then finally on Friday, we've got PCE, which includes the chain price index, which is the inflation indicator that the Fed loves. The market is looking for plus 0.5% on the chain price index. So again, pretty
interesting.
warm
Yeah,
inflation
yeah.
on that front. But
Half a point a
it's
lot.
transitory. Don't
Move
you worry
along.
your pretty little head.
Nothing to see here, fella. But listen, thanks a bunch to everybody that came by for our weekly show. Remember, we still have metal in the box. You guys need something, come on, give us a shout. Also, all of our hedgers, all of you that weren't hedged for this rather high velocity break, I would say to you, get the forms filled out, get your firm involved with us, and let us mitigate your risk for you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to help with that. I
Yep,
will qualify you and get you through the paperwork and get you where you need to be.
yep,
Be happy to help with that. So don't hesitate to reach out.
yep.
With that, my friend, I'm Peter Grant with Zaner Metals in Denver. Have a great week.
Thank you, Pete. You're always the best. And as Grant on Gold, we didn't even talk about. Pete does a midweek overview, and it's terrific. People love it. Subscribe for that. This is Pete Thomas in Chicago. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Bye bye.